Right now,
Today
53.
we'll tackle tough times in California.
Economic troubles facing San Diego will be the focus of Mayor Jerry Sanders' annual State of the City address.
Reports a 60% hike in rapes where either one or both people.
UCLA researchers tracked the progress of 50 sarcoma patients using
From the KPBS studios, this is San Diego Week.
Hello, I'm Joanne Ferry, and thanks for joining us. Tonight on San Diego Week, the troop withdrawal in Afghanistan will not likely mean a homecoming in San Diego. We'll tell you why. And California lawmakers will lose a paycheck next week because they didn't pass a budget on time. We'll hear from some of them later in the show. Also, the surfing Madonna is down. Where will she go next? Plus, a special feature on wheelchair dancing. That and more on the show. But first, the news. Mark Sauer joins me from the KPBS News Center. Mark?
Joanne, trustees of the Sweetwater School District finally had enough of Jesus Gandara. The embattled superintendent was ousted this week. Gandara's litany of missteps included billing the district for hundreds of meals beyond his $800 a month expense account and hitting up contractors for donations at his daughter's bridal shower. Replacing him will be Ed Brand, who had the job before Gandara. Here's what Brand had to say about his new old job.
We've got lots of great things happening. Yeah, we've had a few rocky bumps, but these are things that we've been able to solve in the past, and we've got the talent, we've got terrific people with the talent to fix those problems, and we're going to be back up on top in no time.
Brand earned accolades, but also raised eyebrows during his previous stint. The criticism, dubious use of his school district credit card. A 4-year cascade of water rate hikes in San Diego has been stopped, at least for now. City water officials say the nearly $9 million increase in water supply costs will not be passed on to San Diego residents and businesses next year. The region's largest water utility will instead absorb most of the increased bill by using more relatively cheap water from local reservoirs. After leading San Diego State to a terrific 61-win season, junior Kawhi Leonard is heading to the NBA. The 6'7" forward is joining the San Antonio Spurs after being chosen yesterday as the 15th pick overall in the NBA draft. He's going to a phenomenal franchise that, like Kawhi, is a winner, said SDSU coach Steve Fisher. For a look at all of the week's top stories, visit our website, kpbs.org.
This week, President Obama announced troops in Afghanistan would begin returning home.
Starting next month, we will be able to remove 10,000 of our troops from Afghanistan by the end of this year, and we will bring home a total of 33,000 troops by next summer, fully recovering the surge I announced at West Point. After this initial reduction, our troops will continue coming home at a steady pace as Afghan security forces move into the lead. Our mission will change from combat to support. By 2014, this process of transition will be complete, and the Afghan people will be responsible for their own security.
KPBS reporter Allison St. John covers military affairs. She joins me now to talk about local reaction to the president's announcement. Allison, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Now, can you first describe San Diego's military presence in Afghanistan?
So the Marines from Camp Pendleton are on a rotation with the Marines from Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And every year, the command element changes. So like last year, the command element was from Camp Pendleton. Just recently, some Camp Pendleton Marines have returned. So now there's only about 5,000 Marines from Camp Pendleton in southern Afghanistan. That was more like 10,000 before, and they are expecting it to be more like 10,000 again next spring.
Now, given this announcement, does any of this now change? Have any of the orders on the military base changed?
Well, none of the people that I've spoke to say that they have heard anything about a change in order. The other week I was on Camp Pendleton when some of the Marines returned from Japan, and several of the Marines I spoke to said, oh, we are expecting to deploy to Afghanistan next spring. We are going to have a little break, and then we're going to go straight into training, and as far as we're concerned, the mission is still on, and we are expecting to go. Then I spoke with a spokesperson from the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, who said that Master Sergeant Mark Oliver. Now, he said that he believes that they are not going to be the first ones to be withdrawn, that if there's a drawdown, it won't be the Marines who are the first to go. In fact, they probably would be the last to go, in his view.
Why is
he
that?
says, well, he believes that their mission is very much on the front lines. They're the trigger men. They're the people who are pushing back the Taliban and who really are sort of core part of the mission, and that to pull them back would really compromise the gains that he said that they were making. And he described how he had walked through the market in Marja with General Mills without any kind of flak jacket, and that would have been impossible, you know, a year or so ago, and that they have made great gains there, still fighting very strongly in Sangin, but that he believes that the kind of progress that they've made means that they really need to stay there and keep pushing, keep that pressure on. So that's, of course, from his perspective.
You also spoke with LA Times reporter Tony Perry. Now, I'm sure our audience knows Tony has been over to Afghanistan, Iraq. He's embedded with the Marines several times in the past several years. And he had some insight into this as well. What did he tell you?
He said that just today and yesterday he was at meetings that the Pentagon made some availabilities for journalists, and he heard some of the generals discussing this in detail, what kind of how this drawdown would be implemented. So what he was under the impression was that the details are still very much being worked out, but if we're asking whether it would affect the Marines here in San Diego, the chances are it won't affect them at all this year. Now, next year it might. The 23,000 that the president said would be withdrawn next summer, if it's the end of the summer, then probably our Marines will be going over there on that rotation, you know, 10,000 of them to replace the Marines from Camp Lejeune, and perhaps at the end of the summer, that's when we might see some real impacts on the number of Marines locally that would be coming back.
What about San Diego's congressional delegation? How have they responded to this?
Well, it's interesting because it's sort of bipartisan, isn't it? I mean, it's not like one party or the other believes that we should be withdrawing earlier or later. And Congressman Bob Filner was the only one who actually signed a bipartisan letter asking for a much larger withdrawal almost immediately. The others, Susan Davis, you know, I think they're all aware that really the economy means that we need to be pulling resources home. Susan Davis said that she thought it would be good if they could come back as soon as possible. She is also very aware of the fact that withdrawal of U.S. troops might have a big influence and impact on women in Afghanistan who have seen great gains as a result of the Taliban being pushed back. Then Issa and Bill Bray both pretty much said, well, it's the president's responsibility, but they felt that it's more a matter of rooting out corruption in Afghanistan and pulling back perhaps from the military engagement. And then Hunter, of course, who is the one who has been himself deployed in Afghanistan, he too, believe it or not, as a Republican said, yes, it's time for us to do a drawdown and reduce the number of troops, but as a result, we need to change the mission. And I think he's very interested in helping to work out how to define that mission, to make it a narrower mission so that the fewer remaining troops there can be successful.
Allison St. John, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
The man who signs California legislators' paychecks decided this week they won't be getting them. State Controller John Chung said lawmakers did not meet their obligation to deliver a balanced budget by their June 15th constitutional deadline. A proposition approved by voters last year requires the budget be passed on time or lawmakers don't get paid. We'll speak with two legislators tonight. Later, Democrat Assemblywoman Toni Atkins. But first, Republican Assemblyman Nathan Fletcher, who represents the 75th District. That district stretches from La Jolla to Poway and as far north as Escondido. Thank you, Assemblyman, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first of all, you're not getting paid.
No, not at all.
My
wife has mentioned it a few times.
How much are you losing every day that goes by without a budget?
Well, we're losing the entirety of the salary. Legislators in California are fairly well paid, and it's a sizable amount.
It's about $95,000 a year?
Yeah, about 90 in total compensation, and so we took about a 26% pay cut last year in pay and benefits, and now we're not getting paid at all. And as difficult as it may be on any individual legislator, I actually think it's the right thing to do. If regular folks out there don't do their job, they don't get paid, and legislators shouldn't be any different.
So I did read after the controller made his decision, you said this was a good thing.
Well, it is.
He's a Democrat too, by the way, which is kind of interesting.
I give him credit, and we, throughout my time in office, we will give credit whenever it's due, and I think he did the right thing. The budget that passed wasn't balanced. The governor vetoed it, and the will and intent of the voters was very clear in the last election. If the budget's not done on time, legislators shouldn't get paid, and I think the controller did the right thing, and I think it will also force people to focus a little bit more on getting the solution done. We've got a third of our state is or underemployed right now. A lot of people out there are hurting. A lot of people are having great difficulty, and if legislators can't pass a budget on time, then we should be no exception. We're not doing our job. We shouldn't get paid.
We know in the past this has gone on for months. How does this affect your family if you don't get paid? You're going to miss your first paycheck next week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to miss it, and it'll be difficult. I mean, my wife and I live a fairly modest existence, and we have savings and reserves to draw out of, and we'll change our lifestyle. Ultimately, I would hope the legislature would come together and get this done. We laid out a comprehensive budget about a month ago that funds schools, funds law enforcement, and does it without increasing what is a fairly high tax rate in California. There's a number of options on the table, but at the end of the day, it needs to get done. And my hope would be this would be the impetus to really get people back to the table and negotiating on a solution.
Governor Jerry Brown wants the voter to decide whether or not they should be increasing or maintaining the tax increases. Sure. Would you support putting that on the ballot?
I don't, and there's two reasons why. The first is we were elected to do our jobs. We were elected to make difficult decisions, to balance the budget, and to govern the state of California. And I grow weary of people continually going back to the public to say, we're incapable of making a decision, why don't you make it for us? We have a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. And I think we're seeing too much of a reliance on the initiative process, on a desire to punt difficult decisions to the public.
There's speculation right now that next week Governor Jerry Brown could introduce an all-cuts budget. Now, is that the kind of budget you're going to support?
Well, we put forward a budget. A detailed, comprehensive budget that balanced it without the taxes. Because you can take the cuts the governor proposed in his initial budget that weren't adopted. You can take reforms of the redevelopment agencies that have been put forward. You can take some common sense ideas from the legislative analyst's office from the past. And you can balance this with the increase in revenues we've seen from the economy beginning to start again. And I believe you can balance this budget without raising taxes and while funding your schools. And we put forward that budget. I would like to see us vote on that on the floor of the Assembly.
Great. Assemblyman Fletcher, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Democrat Tony Atkins supported the state budget that was eventually vetoed by Governor Jerry Brown. Assemblywoman Atkins represents the 76th district, which extends from Point Loma all the way north to Claremont. She joins me now. Assemblywoman Atkins, thanks for being here.
Well, thank you.
Now, as I said earlier, you supported this budget, and Controller Chung said that this budget was full of gimmicks, basically, that it really wasn't balanced. How did you react to his take on that?
Well, I think my legislative colleagues and I put forward a balanced, on-time budget that was a responsible spending plan given the limitations that we have before us. And, he has a different take. This is the first time the controller has weighed in light of Proposition 25, and I think there are people who think that it's questionable as to whether he has the ability to do that or not. That'll be worked out in the coming days, but the most important thing is to get back to the work at hand.
Well, his claim specifically was there was $1.3 billion in education that was shortchanged. By law, the state has to provide so much money for education funding, and you didn't do that in the budget that you supported.
And in previous years, they've used similar tactics to balance the budget. Our spending plan sought to minimize the cuts to education as much as possible. And the proposal before us, I think that the governor intends to put forth, does serious cuts. It is an all-cuts budget. And what that really means is that education and public safety will face deep, deep, deep cuts. Our goal was to try to do this over a multi-year workout, which is exactly what the LAO, the legislative analyst referred to by Assemblymember Fletcher, recommended in November of last year, that you do a 3-year workout. We got about 60% of the way there. It wasn't an easy task to figure this out, but really the cuts to education are pretty serious, and should we have to go make further cuts, we're going to affect people's lives.
Do you support Chung's decision? to withhold your pay?
I think, the focus on the pay of legislators is really not the biggest issue that we should be looking at. It's the impact to Californians should we not get a budget passed.
But I think people at home do care about the impact of pay, and they care because they're sort of hurting and saying, look, it's your job to pass a budget. It's your job to pass a budget that's balanced, that works, that isn't full of gimmicks. So it is an issue at home that they want to know about. How does it affect you if you don't get a paycheck?
Well, it affects me, but I also think that there's a lot of people in California hurting. And, it affects me not to get paid. Of course it does. I'm not a wealthy person. Neither are most of the legislators. But we, again, really put forward a budget that we thought was a responsible spending plan so that we didn't have to do deeper cuts and affect Californians more significantly. When you find that you have to consider further cuts and you cut 2 weeks off of a school year or class size is increased, kids never get that time back. And so I think we did our best to put forward something we hoped would be supported. The governor vetoed it, so next week we will be hard at work. Trying to make sure that we do what we can to keep California working.
Assemblywoman Atkins, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
The mayor of Imperial Beach has outlawed medical marijuana dispensaries by using zoning laws. At least that's what pot advocates are saying. They claim his action is illegal. It makes the small seaside community the latest among many California jurisdictions to get rid of pot dispensaries, despite what state law says. Dwayne Brown has the story.
The voters of California in 1996 passed Proposition 215. In 2003, we saw the California state legislature clarify and provide protections for patients who choose to associate in order to cultivate cannabis for themselves. And the city of Imperial Beach has taken that right away from the vulnerable, the sick and dying patients in the city to grow their own medicine. It's an outrage.
I don't think we are limiting access to people. I think it's readily available within easy reach of those that really have a need for it.
There are a handful of dispensaries like this one on the outskirts of Imperial Beach. The council had concerns about possible crime and abuse of medical ID cards, but the mayor says Imperial Beach covers only 2 square miles and can't fit a dispensary within 600 feet of a home, school, or church.
It has to do with how small our city is. If we were a larger city, I could see areas of our city being able to accommodate it.
The owner of this insurance company takes access to medical marijuana personally. In fact, one day he thinks walking up these stairs, you could get more than access to insurance. Why is this issue so important to you?
It is because my sister passed away asking for marijuana and was laughed at in a convalescent care facility.
His application to open a dispensary was denied. The city's business code wouldn't allow it because he's too close to this storefront church. One thing's for certain, more and more cities are passing zoning laws and moratoriums limiting where dispensaries can operate. That means fewer will be available for people who really need them in Imperial Beach and throughout San Diego County.
KPBS reporter Dwayne Brown. At least 9 California counties and 129 cities have banned medical marijuana dispensaries. Many others have moratoriums or use zoning laws to effectively prevent them from operating. Crews have removed the controversial Surfing Madonna mosaic from its original home in Encinitas. Artist Mark Patterson and another person, both disguised as construction workers, installed the mosaic on a wall underneath a train bridge back in April without permission from the city. The stained glass piece gained fast popularity in the community, but was technically an unauthorized use of public property. After 2 weeks of negotiations, Patterson and the city have come to an agreement that allows him to retain ownership of the mosaic and not be charged with vandalism. But he must reimburse the city for thousands of dollars worth of removal fees and pay a $500 fine. Video journalist Katie Eufrat spoke to the artist and a city council member right after the deal was announced.
I think that there's a good reason to relocate it. And I think that that's the way to move forward.
When folks ask, can it stay here? Our visitor here was just standing in a travel lane taking a picture. Unfortunately, that happens every day, and we don't want anybody getting hurt. So it will need to be moved. We have said that all along. And people are wanting it's a very selfish thing, but they want a piece of the Madonna. So look at that. The goal is to keep it in a place where the public can enjoy it, but to make sure that it remains protected.
I've had private offers also from private businesses that are interested in it, but I'd like it to be in a public location. So we'll see how that works out. And that's a step at a time kind of a process to find the right location. But it's going to stay in Encinitas. The mosaic is not for sale. And I would like it to continue to be a gift from me to the community.
The mosaic was taken down Wednesday night. Sheriff's deputies shut down traffic on Encinitas Boulevard near the bridge during the 2-hour process. The piece was not damaged during the removal, contrary to a city commission study that found the piece couldn't be removed without major damage. Patterson revealed his identity as the artist after the study was released, saying he knew how to remove the piece intact. Patterson is now searching for a permanent home for his artwork and says, again, it is not for sale. Well, what do you do if you have a passion for dancing, but you're a wheelchair user? You do wheelchair dancing. It's an up-and-coming activity in more than 40 countries. And KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg tells us wheelchair dancing is starting to get on a roll in San Diego.
You don't have to be able to walk to trip the light fantastic. Inside a hall in San Diego's Balboa Park, 7 people in wheelchairs move counterclockwise around a big circle. 7 able-bodied dancers are by their sides. Instructor William Valencia stands in the middle.
This is really simple, even though it looks a little complicated.
Today, he's showing them the waltz.
Ready, 2, 3, and 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, keep going. Nice. Don't forget to look at your partner. Don't look at their feet.
Valencia offers pointers to the wheelchair dancers.
Don't let the wheels go, so use your abs. Good, now your arms so far. You're too tight in your arms.
And to their partners.
Left foot. Sharon, left foot. Ready? Outside partner. 1. That's your right foot.
All of the dancers look like they're having fun, especially Isaac Whiting. Whiting lives in El Cajon. He discovered the class about a year ago.
I've always wanted to go out into the public and meet other people like me, and I knew in the back of my mind that obviously people in chairs can do more stuff than people say they can do, but I've just never heard about wheelchair dancing, so I wanted to go out and try it.
Wheelchair dancer Beverly Wording co-founded this program with William Valencia. She says it's the first one of its kind on the West Coast. Unlike some of the others here, Wording used to be able to walk. In fact, she used to love to go dancing. But about 15 years ago, Wording was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, and that changed her life.
I found myself not able to go upstairs, or I was falling. Life became so uncomfortable, and finally I had to find myself in a wheelchair.
Wording says she was so ashamed she stayed at home for a year.
It was like a tomb, and I didn't want my able friends to see me in a wheelchair.
Wording says she snapped out of her funk when she came up with the idea of starting a wheelchair dancing class. It took her a year to find a dance teacher willing to take on the task. That was William Valencia.
Here's my partner.
That's my girl. How are you, sweetie?
Very good.
He spent months figuring out how to translate dance techniques to people in wheelchairs. With the support of Sharp Grossmont Hospital, Valencia launched his first class in February 2009. Since then, Valencia figures he's taught about 250 wheelchair dancers.
And so I enjoy teaching them, I enjoy working with them, love learning about their personalities, their experiences, how they do certain things, and the courage they have. So I think they're very strong people.
Through dancing, people in wheelchairs can increase their strength, endurance, and flexibility, says Liz Clarno.
And then just people that are able-bodied, that are volunteering to dance with them, they interact and they begin to see people in wheelchairs as people.
As the dancers move around the room, They execute spins and turns. They look graceful, even elegant. Beverly Wording says that's what it's all about.
And when people see us dancing, they forget that we're in a wheelchair. So we're dancing on our wheels, but it's beautiful. And it's so wonderful for people like myself. It gives us a whole new feel of confidence and something different in our life.
Give your partner a hand, guys. Excellent job.
Very nice. Oh, you did very well.
That was KPBS's Kenny Goldberg reporting. A new cycle of wheelchair dancing classes gets underway in late July at Sharp Grossmont Hospital. And now here's Mark Sauer with an update on what KPBS is working on for next week.
Among stories we're covering on KPBS Radio next week is a feature on how student absenteeism costs schools in San Diego County more than $100 million a year in funding. This comes during a time of severe austerity.
Thanks, Mark. All of the stories you saw tonight can be viewed on our website at kpbs.org/SDweek. And now here's a look at your weekend weather forecast. Have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. Good night.